The wind howled across the rust-colored plains of Varela's 3, sweeping grit into the air and battering anything unanchored. Karen hunched her shoulders against the storm as she trudged across the ridge. Her massive frame, over 9 feet of muscle, armor like chitin, and long, clawed fingers, barely flinched in the cold. She was built for survival, built to endure, but not, she reminded herself bitterly, for love. Her salvage rig beeped, metal signature detected. She adjusted her visor and followed the signal downhill toward a rocky outcropping. What she found wasn't scrap. It was a wrecked human skimmer, smoke curling from a twisted wing. The canopy had blown off, and a body was slumped inside. Karen's heart stuttered. She hesitated only a second before loping forward, boots crunching across the grit. The human was alive, barely. His short, pale frame was blooded, with a gash above one eye. He groaned as she knelt beside him, her shadow engulfing the cockpit. "Easy," she said softly, voice a deep, resonant hum. "You're safe." The man blinked up at her. "What are you?" "Tharaxi," she said simply. "Karen, you are my salvage zone." He gave a faint, crooked grin despite the pain. "Nice to meet you, Karen. I'm Caleb. Pretty sure I owe you my life." Karen carried him in her arms like a child. Her reinforced shelter, half buried under the cliffs, had thick walls and heating coils. She laid Caleb gently on a padded slab and began dressing his wounds with careful hands. Despite her size, her touch was delicate. "You don't have to," Caleb began, but she cut him off with a snort. "You'd be dead if I left you out there. Stay quiet." He obeyed, watching her with curiosity as she moved. He didn't flinch. He didn't stare at her tusks, her thick limbs, or the ridge plates on her back. Most humans did. Instead, he smiled as she wrapped his arm. "So, do all Tharaxi live out here like you?" "No. Most live in the cities. I don't belong there." "Why not?" She paused, then stood. "Rest. I'll bring food." The truth sat heavy on her chest. She knew what the elders used to say. Too big, too wide-shouldered, too monstrous. Tharaxi males like slender partners, agile dancers, not walking fortresses. She'd stopped trying years ago. Later that night, they sat near the heater, eating ration stew. Caleb glanced at her massive hand curled around a cup. "You built all this alone?" She nodded. "Didn't have a choice. People prefer I stay out of sight." "That's ridiculous," he muttered. "You saved my life. You be nothing but kind." Karen looked down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm not what most species want. Not for company. Not for bonding." His brow furrowed. "Why would you say that?" She exhaled. "My body's too big, human. I'm not mating material." The silence was sharp. Caleb looked up at her, really looked at her. Not the bulk, not the armor, not the alien. He saw the gentle strength in her movements, the care in her actions, the sadness she tried to bury. He reached forward slowly and touched her massive hand. "Karen, that's not true. Anyone who told you that is a blind fool." Her throat tightened. She pulled her hand back gently. "You don't understand." "Maybe not yet," he said, "but I'd like to. If you'll let me." That night, Karen lay awake while Caleb slept peacefully in her shelter. She could hear the wind outside, but inside, it was still, warm, safe. She glanced at the man sleeping on her cot, one hand curled beneath his cheek. A strange feeling bloomed in her chest, half hope, half fear. No one had ever looked at her like that before. Not like a monster, not like a salvage beast, but like a person. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be alone forever. The storm that rolled across Varela's 3 lasted longer than expected. Days stretched into nearly a week, and the winds screamed like predators across the rocks. Caleb and Karen were stranded together in her reinforced shelter, the thick walls groaning but holding strong. For Caleb, the experience was oddly peaceful, aside from the occasional rumble of distant thunder. He passed the hours asking questions, tinkering with broken devices Karen had salvaged, or simply watching her move with quiet purpose. Karen, however, was restless, not from the storm, but from him. Caleb wasn't supposed to stay this long. He wasn't supposed to be kind or funny or see her as anything but the strange, too large creature she believed herself to be. She caught him staring once, while she bent down to shift a power cell. He didn't flinch or look away. Instead, he smiled. "You're really strong. You know that." She straightened abruptly, her back hitting the ceiling beam. "I'm big, not strong. There's a difference." "No, there isn't," he replied, brushing dust from his shirt. "I've seen machines do less with more. You're a one-woman construction crew." She turned away, heart pounding. Compliments weren't part of her world. They confused her, made her feel exposed. They shared meals at the central bench. Caleb used a crate as a chair. Karen's furniture was built for Tharaxi weight. "I adjusted the heating grid," he said over dinner one evening. "It's not spiking at night anymore." She blinked, surprised. "You worked on my systems?" "Well, yeah, I am an engineer." He grinned. "Besides, I had to do something useful. You've saved me at least twice now." Karen looked at him long and hard. "You don't act like other humans I've met." He sipped from his mug. "They probably don't live alone with a gorgeous alien woman, either." She froze, muscles tightening. "What?" Caleb met her gaze. "I said what I meant." Her throat clicked as she swallowed. "You don't have to flatter me. I know what I look like." "Yeah, and I meant what I said." Later that night, they sat side by side on the ground, backs to the wall, a soft melody humming from Caleb's datapad. It was human music, low and melodic, with no words. Caleb held out a hand. "Dance with me." Karen recoiled slightly. "I'll crush you." "I'm tougher than I look." She hesitated. "I don't dance." "Me neither." He shrugged. "We can stumble together." Eventually, she reached out and took his hand, so tiny in hers. He stood, pulling her gently up. She towered over him. She moved stiffly, afraid to hurt him. "You don't have to shrink from me," he whispered. "I'm not afraid of you." She looked down at him, surprised. "Everyone's afraid of me." "I'm not everyone." Their movements were clumsy. His head barely reached her chest, but they swayed, slowly, to the rhythm. And for the first time in years, Karen smiled. That night, by the firelight, Karen opened up. Her voice trembled, not from fear of the storm, but from something deeper. "Do you know what the Tharaxi males used to call me?" she asked. Caleb shook his head. "Wallbacker. Like I was meant to fight, not love. None of them ever chose me." She stayed into the flame. "Even among my own kind, I was too much." Silence fell between them. Then Caleb reached out and gently placed his hand on her wrist. "That's not what I see when I look at you." "What do you see?" she asked quietly. "I see strength, compassion, beauty that doesn't apologize for itself." Karen's voice cracked. "You're human. You don't understand what it's like to be told, over and over, that you're unlovable." "I'm human," Caleb said, "which means I know exactly how cruel people can be." He paused. "But it also means I get to choose who matters to me. And I'm choosing you." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but something ancient and buried breaking free. Hope. When the storm finally passed, the silence outside the shelter was so sudden it felt unnatural. For the first time in a week, Karen opened the airlock and stepped out beneath a sky of cold stars. The dust had settled, leaving the red plains flat and quiet. Caleb stood behind her, his jacket patched with Karen's spare synth fiber. The wind ruffled his hair, but he didn't shiver. "Back to civilization," he said, softly. Karen nodded without answering. She had grown used to his presence in the shelter, to his questions, his laughter, the sound of him humming while fixing things. She hadn't realized how full her lonely space had become until the thought of him leaving made it feel hollow again. "You'll be returning to the colony, then?" she asked, voice flat. He turned to her. "I need to check in. Let them know I didn't die in that crash. And I left some equipment behind." She folded her arms across her chest, hiding the pang in her chest. "Of course." Caleb hesitated, then reached up and touched her arm. "I'll come back, Karen." Her eyes flicked down to him, unreadable. "Why?" He smiled faintly. Because I want to. The colony on Varellus 3 was a small but buzzing outpost. Mixed species dwellings, automated warehouses, trade depots, and too many eyes. When Caleb stepped back into it, bruised but alive, he was welcomed with shock, then questions, then gossip. I heard he was rescued by a Tharaxi, someone muttered. Not just any Tharaxi. The big one. The salvage brute. A human in her. That's disgusting. Caleb heard every word. He ignored it at first, but when a technician of the power depot leaned in and sneered, so how was it cuddling up to a monster? Caleb's patience snapped. His fist connected with the man's jaw before he could think. The tech hit the floor with a grunt, clutching his face. She's 10 times the person you'll ever be, Caleb growled. He left before anyone could respond, blood pounding in his ears. He didn't bother with the equipment. He just grabbed his pack and turned back toward the wilds. Karen was working on her hydroponic array when she heard the footsteps. Heavy ones, urgent, familiar. Caleb stepped into view, face flushed, knuckles scraped. I came back sooner than expected. Karen tilted her head. Trouble. He sighed. Apparently, I'm now the colony's punchline. She turned away. I warned you. This was inevitable. Caleb walked closer. Why do you always assume the worst of yourself? She didn't answer. He reached for her hand, huge, calloused, chitan-wrapped, and held it gently. You're not a joke. You're not a mistake. You're the best thing that's happened to me since I left Earth. Karen's voice was a whisper. You don't belong in my world, and I was never meant to have a place in yours. I don't care about those worlds, he said. I care about us. The word echoed between them like a fragile truth. Us. That night, by the firelight, Caleb kissed her. She froze at first. Her body, towering and powerful, was unaccustomed to tenderness. His hands moved slowly, respectfully, tracing lines where soft skin met armor, where strength met stillness. Her breath hitched as he rested his head against her chest. You're not too big, he whispered. You're just enough. When she finally let herself return the kiss, it was with trembling hands and a heart that had never dared to hope. She held him like something precious, and for once, allowed herself to believe she was precious too. Days passed. They worked side by side, upgrading her systems, growing crops, sharing meals. The colony's judgment no longer mattered. Hey, beyond their reach, it was quiet. It was simple. And then Karen began to feel off. Fatigued, sensitive to temperature. Her balance felt slightly off, which was strange for someone as physically disciplined as her. She said nothing at first, but one morning, while examining salvage in her workshop, she dropped a scanner and burst into frustrated tears. Caleb rushed in and held her as she tried to compose herself. I don't know what's wrong with me, she murmured. My body's changing. He brushed her hair back. Maybe you should talk to your people. A healer. She nodded, reluctantly. The Tharaxi elder took one look at her vitals and froze. Her antennae twitched in disbelief. This is unheard of, the elder murmured. You're carrying a child. Karen blinked. A what? A hybrid, the elder confirmed. Your body adapted to him. It's protecting and nurturing new life. This is no accident. Karen stared, stunned, pregnant, with his child. Back at the shelter, Karen sat in silence while Caleb paced in front of her. So, we're going to have a kid, he asked, eyes wide. She nodded slowly. I didn't even think that was possible between us, he added. Neither did I. He knelt in front of her, taking both her massive hands in his. You're not alone in this, Karen. I'm here. For you. For them. She didn't speak, but her arms closed around him, trembling, as something in her finally surrendered. Not fear, not shame. Hope. Karen stood on the cliffside overlooking the valley, the breeze sweeping through the canyon below. Her hands rested gently on her belly, now round and heavy with life. Even through the hardened layers of her armored skin, she could feel it, tiny, rhythmic movements. It was real. It was impossible. It was hers. Behind her, Caleb emerged from the doorway of their new shelter, larger, sturdier, and built together from human tech and Tharaxi stone. His hair was wind-tossed, face smudged with dust, and his grin appeared the moment he saw her. "You okay?" he asked, wiping his hands on a cloth. She turned slightly, still processing. "It's strange. My body always felt like a cage before. Heavy. In the way." He stepped beside her and gently leaned against her side, wrapping an arm around her hip. "Now." She glanced down, placing his hand over the gentle swell of his stomach. "Now it feels like a home." The news of her pregnancy had broken the scientific community. Cross-species viability between Tharaxi and humans was believed to be biologically impossible. But Karen's body had adapted, fused the DNA, stabilized the child, and nurtured it. What no lab could simulate, love had made happen in the wild. The first responses from the colony were disbelief, then faith, then fascination. Researchers sent requests. Doctors asked for access. Karen turned them all away. She didn't want to be a test subject. She was a mother. Caleb was furious when a drone from the outpost tried to scan their perimeter without permission. He took a wrench to it before Karen could even speak. "We're not zoo animals," he muttered. She put a hand on his shoulder, calming him. "They're just afraid of what they don't understand." "Then let's give them something they can understand," he said. "Let's show them what this really is, hope." Weeks passed. The pregnancy advanced quickly, faster than either species predicted. Karen grew stronger and softer all at once. She was used to being feared for her size. Now, for the first time, her size was part of something beautiful, something sacred. Caleb kept records of everything. Her changing vitals, the baby's development, emotional shifts, just in case the child one day wanted to know the story of how they came to be. "You think they'll be like me?" Karen asked one night, curled around him beneath the blankets. "I think they'll be like us," he said. "Strong, stubborn, smart, and maybe a little too tall to fit through standard doors." She chuckled, low and warm. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too," he said. "But I'm also excited, because for the first time in my life, I know where I belong." The child was born under the silver moons of Virelis 3. Karen labored in the quiet dark, surrounded only by the machine she built and the man who never left her side. Caleb held her hand, tiny in haze, through every tremor and roar. Her strength was terrifying, her tenderness divine. When the first cries pierced the air, they echoed through the canyon like the start of a new age. A girl, half human, half Tharaxi, tiny, with mottled skin like Karen's but softer, and eyes like Caleb's, bright, curious, defiant. Karen held her daughter against her chest, stunned by how small she was. "She fits," she whispered. Caleb laughed gently. "Told you. Just enough." Over time, the colony began to shift. Other humans came, curious, careful, less afraid. One brought flowers. Another offered trade. Slowly, Karen stopped being the shadow outside the walls and became something else, the future. In time, she and Caleb helped found a new kind of settlement, open to interspecies families, hybrids, outcasts, and wanderers. They called it Hearthstone. Their daughter grew, strong and joyful, chasing solar bugs and lifting scrap heavier than most adults. She called Caleb Pa and Karen Emma. She once asked why people looked at them strangely sometimes. Karen crouched beside her and answered simply, "Because they don't understand how powerful love can be." One evening, as the twin suns set in streaks of gold, Karen sat with Caleb on the ledge of their home. Their daughter was curled in her lap, sleeping soundly. Karen whispered, "Do you remember the first thing I told you?" Caleb smiled. "You said you weren't mating material." She laughed softly. "I was wrong. You were perfect," he said, brushing her cheek. "You were never too big. The world just wasn't big enough to see you clearly." Karen leaned into him, hearts full. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like too much. She felt whole.